So Shockwave's actually pretty popular. Looks absolutely fabulous on a whole of house. It looks fabulous on a matrix. It looks great on a tree. This really is just this sort of blurry circle, and I believe that's the only shape. You get to control how small it starts, how big it gets. You get to control the acceleration, etc. You do get to get rid of the circles. So yeah, you get to decide, what have I done? Oh, seems like acceleration you want small. So I'm sure I've set these settings wrong. I'm assuming this will explode in or something. Actually, it's probably the radiuses that I'm getting wrong. There we go. That makes it. So you get that explosion. We'll make it shorter. So this can look really good, particularly if you time it nicely with your beats, etc. You get that sort of that big pulse expanding across your house or across your model. You get that really big bass beat or something, and you have a shockwave go across the house. It can look quite spectacular. I know Lilia uses this one extensively in her songs as a real emphasize point when things are going on in the song. You can also move them around X and Y axes, which means, you know, you throw a few layers in, throw a few of these in. There's a sequence that Lilia has done. I'm going to show you. And I'll just quickly bring it up. All right. All right. You watch how she uses the shockwave in this particular one. It's pretty much just shockwave after and all of these here are shockwaves as well. So an incredibly useful effect, particularly if you're as good at sequencing as she is. Let's go back to where we were. Makes my sequencing look really average. All right. Well, there's our measly shockwave. So yeah, a really, really useful effect. Definitely want to play with that one and learn that one. Single strand. Okay, so single strand effects are primarily designed for roof lines and the like, to do things like that. But like every effect, it's always good to see them on a matrix because you get a feeling for what it's doing. And that's what it's doing. It's not a very exciting effect when you look at it like that. You can set up the number of chases. So if we set this up, number of chases, you can see that it, you set it too high, doesn't look great. That's what number of chases does. The chase size changes the size of those bars, so how much of it's white versus how much of it's black. The cycles will, of course, change how fast it moves. All of these things have value curves. You can change how it goes. I actually quite like the bounce. particularly if you slow it down a little. It almost seems to double back on itself. So that can look quite good. There's a whole bunch of those, you know, to the middles, etc. You add a 3D fade. It's hard to tell. You can see how they're now fading in. If we bring that down, whoops, not the whole house. We'll go up there, apply it. You can see that, you can see why they call it a single strand effect. It's not really optimized to look good on a matrix. It's really optimized to look good on, you know, your house borders and the like. Also, it looks great on arches as well. All right, so you can create some really interesting effects on arches with it. Oh, and then there's group all arches. So if you see here, right, how it's folding in towards the middle, on the arches effect, it's folding into the middle on each arch. If you set it on group all arches, it fades onto the middle of the middle arch from the outside. So this one's interestingly aware of that. You also have skips. So skips is actually a different effect. So yeah, it looks different applied to something like arches. Is going to give you this sort of progression, you know, the marching ants type look. Same on your roof line. Obviously the colors are controllable up here like they always are. The skip size actually is the black piece there, so if I move that to 0, I get rid of the blackness, so there's no blackness in here. The band size here controls how big those colored bands are. So look, in theory, this is the closest way to get what I was getting with that image effect earlier, using those skips. Back here, you can also change the colors. Doesn't look very rainbowy, does it? Interesting. I wonder why that's not. All right. So that's a single line effect, really powerful on roof lines, arches, not so useful on other things. Where are we? Snowflakes. My favorite effect. This is the first effect I did work on, but I only changed it. So the snowflake effect's obviously designed to look like falling snow. Sometimes there's a lot falling, sometimes not so much. Look, there's different types of snowflakes, but to be honest, I actually only like one. But there are bigger snowflakes. The redness there, you're controlling. If you just want them white, just select white. And but if you want them to be blue, I guess every now and then blue snow falls. And obviously you get to control how fast it falls as well. So you can have a lot of snow falling very quickly, and we're in a bit of a snowstorm. But that's all driving snow. Sometimes you can see that you can see how the snow is actually quite repetitive, the nature of the effect. There is a falling snow which looks a little bit more natural. Again, you can pump up the number of flakes that are falling. You can slow it down. And you can also make it accumulate. So the snow builds up at the bottom of the effect. I love using this as a background on a matrix when I'm scrolling Santa Claus across it. I've got a singing face on the matrix, which is a snowman singing a song, and I use the snowfall in the background, and it slowly fills up and up to a reasonable level on him, and then I just reset it. But it looks really cool sitting behind an image. a snowman. It's also cool if you can actually throw a text effect behind here as well. And I have Merry Christmas in red, white, and green letters that scrolls across, and the snow falls down across the front of it, which looks pretty good as well. So that's the snowflake effect. Snowstorm. This is a weird effect. It looks good, but it's weird. I have no idea how it gets, what it's deciding to do. Max flakes obviously makes it look busier. Minimum flakes, I don't know why it supports a 0, but it's obviously a progression, leaving a trail that fades. You can control how long the tail is, which obviously leaves more behind or not. If you add additional colors in, you get this sort of mix and blend of colors going on, and you can control the speed. So it's quite strange. I'm not quite sure why it goes right to left, but obviously if you want to make that, we go counterclockwise 90, if you want to make it fall, you can do that just by transforming the buffer. But it's quite a strange effect. I've never seen a snowstorm work that way. Maybe I haven't spent enough time in Chicago. Snowstorm. Where are we? Snowflake, snowstorm, spirals. We'll have to put these on a tree because they look very good on a tree. All right. So it's running so slow because the effect's so long. So here again, you get to decide how many times the pattern repeats. The spirals always has blackness in it, pretty much. You can pump the thickness up, but yeah, it's designed to have the blackness. I don't know why blackness is not something you choose, but it's just not how it works. You do get to decide how much the spirals wrap around and which way they wrap around. You can control with this. This is actually really cool if you use a value curve on it. So if I set that to a sine wave, that looks a bit funny. Why is that going absolutely nuts? Oh, okay. So you can see how it's sort of swinging backwards and forwards. Let's do that up on a matrix. So you get a matrix is just a bit wider, so you get a better appreciation for what it's actually doing. So it's swinging the spiral backwards and forwards and also moving it along. That's this movement thing. If you want to move it back to the left, you just set the movement further to the left here. So yeah, so we can make the spiral move either way. The thickness controls how thick each one of these is. As you thicken it up, actually you can get it to be full. And then if I set that, you can see how you can get some quite interesting effects with the spiral. You can blend it. It doesn't look very useful. 3D is much better. You get a 3D effect on the spirals. The grow, obviously, not quite sure what grow is doing. Or shrink. Speed it up a bit, see if it makes a difference. Okay, I have no idea what grow or shrink is doing. With some of the older effects, I know with some of the newer effects, I've tried to be quite diligent with disabling the settings that don't make any sense, because sometimes the combinations don't make sense together. Some of the older effects, that's not done, and you've kind of got to guess what the things do within a certain context. It's something we do need to work on improving. But that's spirals. Like I say, absolutely fabulous on trees. Try putting them on several layers. You know, put several layers of spirals, potentially moving in different directions. Take advantage of the blending so that you could they merge into one another. You can really create some quite spectacular effects on trees with the use of a spiral. Okay, all right. Here's another weird effect. Spirograph. I added value curves to this week in desperation to try and make these things do something interesting. It is possible. You would have all, I imagine everyone remembers Spirograph from being a kid. Look, you can create some interesting patterns. There's a speed. You amp the speed up, and it can start to look quite dynamic. You know, I just play with these things. I really don't entirely understand exactly how this one works. I added the value curves to try and get it to do some different things. But yeah, I've never knowingly seen someone use it though. I'm not sure it's a very popular effect at all. Play with it. Have a look. The state effect I'll come back to because it's much like the faces effect. That's new in this release. This is something that I was working on with Fing to support my Tune 2 sign, but also to support his sequencing of Bruno and Patrick. I also hope to put a separate video out on how that is, what that is, and how it works. The strobe, this works fine on the whole house. Also, well, it'll work on pretty much anything, but it will work well on a whole house if you set it up enough. It's kind of hard to see. It'll be even worse in the video, so let's go and put it onto our tree instead. So here you see it's basically a number of pixels blinking on and then fading off. You get to control how long each one stays on for. The types of strobes, I'm not sure what each of the types are. They seem to be getting larger, maybe. I think maybe if I drop it down, you'll be able to tell. Okay, yeah, okay, so the strobes are a slightly different shape. They're not always just one pixel, although I think I would use them as one pixel. You can also make them react to sound. So, I don't know, let's find an interesting part of the song. We'll drop a strobe effect on to our tree. Okay, we'll do it again. So yeah, so the number of strobes that are flashing on at any one point in time is proportional to the intensity of the music. So as it goes through a more intense part of the song, you would expect to see a proportionate increase. So yeah, so another one of these effects that reacts to the music. All right, so how are we doing for time? Any questions? I feel like I've been blowing through so many of these. All right, nothing there? We all good, Ben? All right. Okay, let's go on. We'll cover off these last few here and we'll see what we get to. Tendril. Tendril's a really odd effect. This is my fault. You know, the way I like to imagine it, it's like someone's holding a piece of string over a table and wiggling it around, and the rest of the string is sort of how the string behaves on the table. In its default mode, it's random. It's using the color palette up here to decide what color to be. You can tune the randomness. You can decide whether it's very random or not very random. In terms of how far it jumps. You can pump up the thickness. I would generally suggest you do that, particularly if you're putting it on something that's not very dense like a tree or the like. The thickness really helps fill things out. The friction dampening and tension settings here all control how this thing reacts. So as you move it around, it can sort of get quite out of control and all over the place. So it can create quite an interesting and busy effect within another effect. Trails I'd never touch. Sometimes length just makes it a little bit shorter so it doesn't get as busy. The offsets let you move around the start and the like. Now the key thing with this though is there's actually different default movements. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take advantage. This is one of these effects which I'm going to click somewhere else and then I'm going to come back and put it back in. Okay, and it goes back to its default settings because this is one of these ones that gets quite out of control after you start to play with it. So it starts with this random movement where the end just keeps randomly moving around. There's a square movement where it basically runs the end around the outside and you end up with this sort of circle. As I said, you want the thickness to be a little bit bigger. There's actually a circle where it drags it around in a circle, and if you play with the tension, you can control how tight the spiral becomes. Tuning the movement here lets you control how quickly it spins. Some of these things also have value curves, so you can change the thickness over the course. The horizontal zigzag, this is actually pretty cool. This can, you know, you set the color to green, and at times it almost looks like a tree, the way it swings up and down. And there's a vertical and a return and whatever. Then there's the music line. This one's interesting because where'd it go? That's interesting. I reckon that's a bug. It's not meant to do that. So what it's meant to be doing is following the music. But I say it's a bug because it's meant to get to the end and it's meant to bounce back again. I'm not sure why that's working. Ben, are you taking notes? You have to send that as a bug to me. I'm not sure why music line's not working. Music circle is similar, except in this time it goes around in a circle around the point, again reacting to the intensity of the music. So, and then there's manual. And in manual, you've got this X and this Y down here, and you get to, via a value curve, decide how you want the X coordinate to work. So this one, the X coordinate's going to start at 0, it's going to move across, and it's going to come across. So you would expect it will travel across, and then it will travel back again. Not very interesting. We might need to add a Y And so how about we put a ramp on the Y? And so on the Y, it's going to come across and then it's going to go back again. Again, not overly interesting, but if we pump up the cycles here, we can actually get something getting more interesting. We make it a little bit thicker, or change the tension. If we change the tension, it will change how quickly it settles back towards the middle. So yeah, so tendrils is an interesting effect, probably not something you'd put on its own, but combined with other effects in layers, made thick, used as a mask, it can produce some interesting results. Text does the very obvious. Lets you put text up. You can do 4 lines of text. I would strongly suggest that you stick with a single line. If you want more lines, actually drop multiple effects. We have for some time been talking about getting rid of the second lines, and conversion will go so much smoother if you don't use them. You can of course make the text move, scroll in, scroll up and down. Wavy doesn't do anything, I don't know why. There's a whole bunch of text movements that you can put in. You can control how fast it moves. You can do rotations of the text. You can also do countdowns and the like. But you've got to go and put things in exactly this order. So 1, and then I want to say, I don't know, 23, 0, 0, 0, 0, invalidate. There you go. I'd be reading the manual. Is it still saying invalidate? It is. I have no idea. I have to read the manual. Seconds. I'm sure I can do that. There you go. 2019. That movement is getting more than a little annoying. There we go. 2019, 18. So for those of you that don't want to build a Coro type counter, you can put a counter up on a matrix or on your tree or something. You also get to control the movement. You can set your start and end positions, offsetting pixels. Again, these are by default percentages, but you can set them to be absolute, those sorts of things. So that's the text effect. If you want a mixed up text, there's obviously a lot of fonts that you can use here. I know if you use a fixed font, set 3 text effects. None. Of course, I should have said that before. All right. So if I set this one to be space HE. All right. That's okay. All right, now I can set them different colors. So it's white. And if I set them all to be a fixed format font like a Courier or something, set it to Courier New, set it to Courier New. And finally set this one, oh, that one's already Courier New. Set this one to Courier New. And I end up with a word which actually has alternating letters. I'm sure I've made a mistake in there somewhere, which is why they're not perfectly lined up. But you can use layers to combine things in such sort of ways, using different parts of the words to generate some interesting text effects. Okay, let's move on. The tree is really only useful on trees. What are the odds? And really, get rid of the white, let it be green. You can change the number of branches. And so you can see it actually it turns a pixel tree into something that looks more like a regular tree, or at least that's the concept. The speed here controls those very annoying things that come across it. I don't believe there's any way to turn them off. But yeah, it takes a pixel tree and makes it look a little bit like a tree. If you put a purple or something on it, it can produce quite an interesting effect on a tree. Not commonly used, but also it is used from time to time. I have seen people use it on their mega trees. Okay. So what have we got? Twinkle, a strange effect as well. You need to really pump the number of lights up, and you get this sort of pulsing, fading background. You can strobe. The pixel steps, they just really seems to control how often it happens. But like I say, you really have to put it up to a reasonable level to get it to look interesting. Again, look useful over even a whole house if you just want that sort of that pulsing color. It still can provide an interesting effect like that. Video, we'll come back to video, we'll come back to VU meter. I'll do wave. Wave is really a simple sine wave, but there's a whole bunch of value curves here, so you can change the number of waves, which is kind of like the number of cycles. You can control the fix of the wave. You can control the wave, and you control what wave moves. You also get to change how it fills in the wave. Generally speaking, I can use the palette to control it. You can control the direction as well, and of course you have types of waves. Not even sure how to make that. Maybe speed's a problem. Okay. Square wave, decaying sine, and a fractal. Okay. So all different waveforms. Again, these putting multiple, I actually use 3 waves for producing some random looking effects on some of my arches. And now that you've got the value curves, you can create some more interesting looking effects as well. Go to sine. You can see the sine wave grows in thickness over the duration of the effect using the value curve. All right. So let's go to video, and then we'll finish up with the VU meter. Well, it's 9:23. 3. We'll be actually pretty easy. Video makes video incredibly easy. So you drop the video effect onto generally a matrix. There's really not much point doing it on much else. A tree's probably a little bit low resolution and not actually valuable. You go in and you grab your video, and your video plays, and that's it. If you've got a long video, you can control whereabouts in the video you start. Look, it works fine. If you've got a really short video, so if I go up, sorry, I'll just find. Okay, so here's a short video. It's just a lead-in countdown. This video is not very long, as you can see. So it's going to reach the end, and then it will go blue because it's reached the end. You have a couple of options around the duration. You can loop it. So when it gets to the end of the video, it just goes back to the beginning and restarts it. So, for instance, if you've got a fluttering flag or something you would have put on it, that can work pretty well, just to keep on looping it. You can also slow accelerate it, and what this does is it drags the video out to fill the time interval. So if you take a very short video, which this one is, and you stretch it out over a long period of time, it's going to run very slowly. In fact, there it is, it's starting. And you can see it's running quite slowly. If you compress it down and make it really, really short, then the video plays really quickly. So that's what the slow and accelerate does. You also have the maintain aspect ratio. So if the video is in a slightly different form than the shape of your matrix, the maintain aspect ratio will make sure that the whole video shows. So it may need to compress it a little bit more to fit. If you're creating a new sequence, you can actually, in the musical sequence, you can choose your video file for your audio track. And then when you go and put a timing mark in, we'll grab our video effect, we'll throw it on our matrix. Of course, we don't want that video. We want our OLAF video. And now we go back and play it.
Oh, I don't know why, but I've always loved the idea of summer and sun and all things hot.
Really? I'm guessing you don't have much experience with heat.
Nope.
So you can see it does an absolutely fabulous job of synchronizing the video and the audio together. So that's the video effect. It's not that exciting, but it's incredibly useful. You can throw as many of these on as you like. I think I saw a demo where someone had something like 6 videos running concurrently across their display. XLights will be quite happy with doing that. All right. I don't know, Ben, I'm looking at the time. VU meter is like 20 controls in one. And we've got state effect, and we haven't done faces either. Should we leave those till next week? I think I've put Ben to sleep. How may I set up a matrix so I'll see what a projector would be showing? The matrix will be not part of the show, only used. Okay, so you can absolutely do this. Sean does this on his house. What I suggest you do is you just create a matrix. You can see here, this is only 100 by 50. The challenge you've got is that when you generate your F sequence file, it is going to put all the data in there. That's okay, as long as you don't map it to anything. Your Falcon Pi player is not going to complain about it. So that's okay. but it is going to make your F sequence file a lot larger. Another option you have is obviously to delete the video or that model from your show just before you generate it, and that will make it a bit smaller.